Welcome. I'm Doug Morgan, and you're listening to Uncommon Sense, where we hunt for the truth in the topics you're not supposed to talk about, Christianity and politics. We have done many podcasts over the years here on this podcast about the importance of free speech. We will do more, I'm sure, because it is such an important subject. But today, I want to take a look at the battle that is happening over free speech. If you have a conversation with a leftist, they will tell you that there should be more restrictions on free speech. There should be more laws against hate speech and things like that. In fact, the Biden administration actually had a department of misinformation for a time. But there are those that understand what free speech is and how important it is that we fight for it. In a series of articles from the Daily Wire comes this: Vice President J.D. Vance blasted a trio of German prosecutors who said during an interview with 60 Minutes that insults, both in person and online, are illegal in their country. Yes, insults are illegal in their country, whether they be in person or online. The 60 Minutes segment that aired on Sunday reported on Germany's enforcement of its hate speech law, which has been around since 2017, and showed police raiding German citizens' homes and confiscating electronics over social media posts. During the interview, all three German state prosecutors told host Sharon Alfonsi that insulting someone in public and online is criminal. Criminal mean you can go to jail. Those who break the law are usually punished with a stiff fine, but repeat offenders could be thrown in jail. Quote, the fine could even be higher if you insult someone in the internet, said State Prosecutor Dr. Mathis Fink, and adding that because in internet, he says, it stays there. If we are talking face to face, you insult me, I insult you, okay, finish. But if you're in the internet, if I insult you or a politician, it sticks around forever. Okay. Yeah. And in fact, I mean, this is just crazy. This is craziness. State Prosecutor Savinia, I'm going to slaughter the name here, but Meaning-Haas, I guess is how you pronounce that, added that reposting a lie, which could include gossip or fake quotes, is also a criminal action in Germany because the reader can't distinguish whether you just invented this or reposted it. Yeah. Along with finding the offenders of the hate speech law, judges sometimes confiscate their phones. In fact, J.D. Vance spoke out against this. He said, quote, in Munich last week, J.D. Vance warned Europe against this kind of censorship, blasting the Orwellian German hate speech law on Monday. But I want you to hear this 60 Minutes clip and judge for yourself what they're talking about.
Is it a crime to insult somebody in public?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
And it's a crime to insult them online as well?
Yes.
The fine could be even higher.
Yeah.
If you insult someone in the internet.
Why?
Because in internet, it stays there. If we are talking here face to face, you insult me, I insult you, okay, finish. But if you in the internet, if I insult you or a politician,
That sticks around forever.
yeah.
The prosecutors explain German law also prohibits the spread of malicious gossip, violent threats, and fake quotes. If somebody posts something that's not true, and then somebody else reposts it or likes it, are they committing a crime?
Yeah, in the case of reposting, it is a crime as well, because the reader can't distinguish whether you just invented this or just reposted it. That's the same for us.
The punishment for breaking hate speech laws can include jail time for repeat offenders.
That is crazy, don't you think? I mean, jail time for repeat offenders here. Here's a quote. Insulting someone is not a crime. This is according to JD Vance, okay? Insulting someone is not a crime. And criminalizing speech is going to put real strain on European-US relations. This is what the vice president actually posted on X. And he said, this is Orwellian. And everyone in Europe and the US must reject this lunacy. Now, during his Friday speech in Munich Security Conference, Vance ripped European countries that have cracked down on free speech. He said, I believe deeply that there is no security if you're afraid of the voices, the opinions, and the consciences that guide your very own people. This is what Vance said. He said, Europe faces many challenges, but the crisis this continent faces right now, the crisis I believe we all face together, is one of our own making. If you're running in fear of your own voters, there is nothing America can do for you, nor, for that matter, is there anything that you can do for the American people who elected me and elected President Trump. The more I hear of JD Vance, the more I really like him. But getting back to the point here, okay? There is a battle, and here's a good example. For instance, here's a quote. I'm glad Margaret Brennan blamed free speech for the rise of the Nazis. This is what columnist John Podhoretz, I guess is how you pronounce his name. I got some doozies today. He says, it's always a virtue when a person in a position of authority and influence who was elevated beyond her station reveals her ineptitude and folly so that the world can see her clearly henceforth. Yeah, this is bonkers, said Red State writer Bonji. Pull her off the air, bonkers. In fact, I want you to hear what she said. Here is her quote.
Well, he was standing in a country where free speech was weaponized to conduct a genocide. And he met with the head of a political party that has far-right views and some historic ties to extreme groups. The context of that was changing the tone of it. And you know that the censorship was specifically about the right.
No, I have to disagree with you. Free speech was not used to conduct a genocide. The genocide was conducted by an authoritarian Nazi regime that happened to also be genocidal because they hated Jews and they hated minorities and they hated those that they had a list of people they hated, but primarily the Jews. There was no free speech in Nazi Germany. There was none. There was also no opposition in Nazi Germany. They were a sole and only party that governed that country. So that's not an accurate reflection of history.
Yeah. Radio host Eric Erickson posted on X, can we just talk about how a prominent American news anchor actually believes Nazi Germany had free speech and that supposed free speech is to blame for the Holocaust? That's both deeply arrogant and deeply ignorant. I would agree. Columnist Carol Markowitz posted on X, it's wild that this is how far the left has fallen. Free speech caused the Holocaust? You guys? Really? This is absolute lunacy from Margaret Brennan, wrote a journalist, Andrew Kerr. I could just go on and on and on. But I really liked what Matt Walsh had to say. And he said, over at CBS News, Margaret Brennan suggested that Vance was wrong to extol the virtues of free speech because the Nazis used free speech, and that's how you got the Holocaust. Well, to be clear, yes, this is a real segment that actually aired on national television. That's why I had to play it for you, because I knew you wouldn't believe me. But keep in mind, the woman who asked this question moderated the vice president's debate in which she cut off J.D. Vance's microphone because he refuted one of her lies about immigration. Now, here she is, claiming that Nazis somehow weaponized speech to conduct a genocide. On reflection, it's actually impressive how little her question makes sense. First of all, it doesn't actually mean anything to weaponize free speech to conduct a genocide. The words don't come together in a way that makes any sense. It's like saying the Nazis weaponized air to conduct a genocide. So therefore, we need to ban air, I guess, since the Nazis used it. But in this case, she's just wrong on the basic facts. Before the Nazis rose to power, when Germany had laws against so-called hate speech, including laws that prohibited hate speech against Jews. Prior to the rise of the Nazis, they shut down something like 100 newspapers in Prussia alone over a 2-year period. And in 1925, Hitler was banned from speaking in some states because of his rhetoric. And in the end, all of these speech restrictions actually emboldened Nazis. People assumed that because these Nazis were being censored, maybe they were into something. Censorship had the exact opposite of its intended effect. Then, of course, when the Nazis took over, they eliminated free speech, as Rubio said. You couldn't criticize Hitler in any way. So there are about 1 million reasons why Margaret Brennan's question is completely nonsense. And he says, I could go on and pick apart Brennan's logic some more, but I really don't need to because of her own network. CBS did it for me. This weekend, CBS just so happened to do a whole segment about how Germany cracks down on free speech. They conduct pre-dawn raids on people who put offensive content on the internet. Try to imagine how CBS would be covering raids like this if they came at the direction of Donald Trump, let's say. Let's say Trump decides that he wants to ban hate speech. So he'll conduct pre-dawn raids against anyone who posts hateful content about white people on the internet. How do you think 60 Minutes would react to something like that? Imagine Joy Reid or Jamil Hill getting carted away by armed law enforcement officers in the middle of the night because they made their 1 millionth post about how white people are evil. How do you think CBS might respond? I can tell you this, Margaret Brennan wouldn't come out and declare that Trump was doing his part to prevent another Holocaust. That's because the corporate press isn't actually concerned about the rise of an authoritarian government. They just want to make sure they're the ones running it. She's being told that people in Germany are shocked to realize that their electronic devices are being seized. And she's smiling through the whole thing. If you could see the entire segment, she's nodding and smiling through the whole thing, and you won't find any pushback whatsoever from CBS. They didn't bring on a guest to explain how actually this is a horrible idea. Instead, the whole segment came across like a promotion for state censorship. As it continued, it became more and more bizarre. In fact, conservatives are reacting with shock and horror to this footage, which is, of course, understandable. And we can't forget, however, that something very similar has already happened here in this country. And we would have gone full Germany if Trump wouldn't have won. Everyone on the left understands this. That's why they're lying to their viewers about what life is like in Germany at the moment. For example, MSNBC talking head Rick Wilson explained that Germany, despite the pre-dawn raids over memes, has a far better free speech environment than America does. What makes the left's assault on free speech so insidious, whether in this country or in Germany or anywhere else in the Western world, is not just that they seek to ban open expression, but that they significantly want to ban the expression of true and morally right ideas. That's the key element that will always separate left-wing assaults on free speech from alleged right-wing assaults on free speech. Whenever someone claims that the right is waging an assault on free speech, it always means that some conservatives are advocating for restrictions on pornography or trying to ban adults from staging burlesque shows for children. On the other hand, when the left bans free speech, they're trying to stop us from saying that men can't have babies, or they're demanding that we show religious reverence to the pride flag. They're arresting people for leaving tire marks on rainbow-colored sidewalks, just as one example, of course. The alleged right-wing restrictions on speech aren't really restrictions on speech at all. And in fact, Tim Wyatt, he last November, he wrote this. He says that it might seem absurd, but as the last month, a new law has come into force, which could criminalize what Christians pray silently in their heads. That they would criminalize that, and if they are standing in the wrong place. At the heart of the issue is the question of abortion. The Public Order Act 2023 ostensibly targets disruptive protests inspired by the likes of Extinction Rebellion and Just Stop Oil. But during parliamentary debate, an extra amendment was added by MPs which created special buffer zones around abortion clinics. Now, if you are within 150 meters of anywhere offering abortion services, it is a criminal offense to influence a person's decision to access those services, to obstruct them from from going inside, or to cause harassment, alarm, or distress, as they put it. The story of buffer zones actually begins when Ealing Council in West London imposed one around a single clinic in 2018. The decision was taken in response to a group of Christian pro-life activists who had started protesting outside. Influenced by the American group 40 Days for Life, which organizes protests throughout Lent, there are now dozens of abortion clinics around the UK which regularly see Christian pro-life gatherings outside. And just how disruptive or abusive these truly are is disputed. But when a previous government explored the issue back in 2018, it concluded most were passive in nature, featuring leaflets being handed out, banners displayed, and prayers said. Therefore, they concluded a nationwide buffer law zone would be disproportionate. Even before the recent changes to national legislation came into force, several Christians had been arrested for breaching local buffer zones, not for screaming abuse at clinic staff or shoving bloody baby dolls into the hands of women going in or out, or trying to blockade entrances. For they were there for praying silently in their heads. One such case involved the head of the pro-life group March for Life, Isabella von Spruce, who has been arrested outside a Birmingham abortion clinic on several occasions. We've done podcasts involving her, and in a video taken of one arrest, von Spruce, who stands alone with her hands in her pockets and her head bowed, is told by two police officers that she is breaching the public space protection order simply by being there. In response, the activist said she is not protesting, merely praying silently in her head, engaging in prayer, as she says. She says that is the offense. The officer replies with that. That is the offense, engaging in prayer. Also in Birmingham, Catholic priest Sean Gu was arrested for silently praying while holding a placard saying, "Praying for free speech," inside a buffer zone. Police also charged him with parking his car inside the 150-meter zone because it had a bumper sticker with the words "Unborn Lives Matter." In Bournemouth, another Christian activist, Adam Smith Connor, was arrested for praying silently for his own aborted son outside a local clinic. Smith Connor said he stood with his back to the clinic and head bowed for a few minutes to pray for his son, who he persuaded his then girlfriend to abort 22 years ago. Von Spruce eventually had her case dismissed and even won compensation from the police for wrongful arrest. But Go was also acquitted of all charges in court. But Smith Connor was not so fortunate. In October of this year, the court ruled. I'm sorry, this was last year. The court ruled that simply praying silently, head bowed, and hands clasped within a buffer zone amounted to an expression of disapproval of abortion. He was therefore guilty of breaking the law. Speaking outside the court, Smith Connor said, quote, "Today the court has decided that certain thoughts, silent thoughts, can be illegal in the United Kingdom. All I did was pray to God in the privacy of my own mind, and yet I stand convicted as a criminal." Despite the law now being enforced across England, no guidance on how police forces and prosecutors should implement the vaguely worded influencing clause has been made public. Some media organizations have seen versions of guidance from the Crown Prosecution Service. They call that the CPS, which does not appear to contain the rigid protections for silent prayer as before. Prosecutors have reportedly been told that there is no defense on religious grounds for trying to influence others while inside the buffer zone. However, each case should be considered in its particular circumstances. So, silent prayer is not automatically an offense, but neither is it definitely protected. So instead, it appears that Christian pro-life activists will be in the hands of the police officers who turn up on the day and their own reading of the situation. Well, Von Spruce said that the introduction of the buffer zones was a shameful day for our country, and he pushed for the criminalization of silent prayer and consequential conversations. The pro-choice movement sought to sweep peaceful, compassionate Christians off the streets entirely. The Alliance for Defending Freedom, the ADF, a Christian legal advocacy group which has been supporting Smith Connor's cause, has confirmed that they will be appealing this conviction and decry that the national buffer zone law is quote, the vague and far-reaching wording of the law could find people in trouble for merely engaging in consensual conversation with a friend or family member about abortion, or simply praying silently in their minds. That's what Lois McClatchy, McClatchy Miller of ADF said. But she added that the CPS guidance was encouraging in that it clarified that silent prayer was not necessarily a crime. However, McClatchy Miller would not be drawn on the ADF's broader strategy beyond Smith Connor's case, declining to say if the group was planning a judicial review or legal test case over the new nationwide law. And on the day the ban came into effect, several journalists approached pro-life protesters outside clinics across the country to ask how they would respond. And some in the central London had simply moved themselves just over the 150-meter away mark to evade the law, including Claire McCollum, who has held pro-life vigils for decades. However, she told the Daily Mail that other activists might decide to defy the unjust and ridiculous law and remain in place despite restricting or risking arrest. So yeah, I mean, it is a battle. It is a battle that's taking place, and we are to fight this battle. Abdulaki Siab Abdo knows the real danger of online censorship. The husband and father of 5 walked out of an Egyptian jail recently after 3 years of detention. The reason for his punishment: authorities had taken a dislike to his participation in a private Facebook group. Yeah, Abdo was a Christian convert from Islam and liked to discuss theology with other like-minded friends online. And expressing his faith online cost him his freedom and placed him in immensely difficult conditions as he battled failing health from a Cairo cell. The comparison to America's recent vibe shift toward freedom could not be starker. Zuckerberg's apparent U-turn on free speech last month brought much jubilation to conservative commentators. We covered it here on the podcast. Many of which who have voiced concerns over the years about censorship and lawful content on Meta. Quote, "It's time to get back to our roots on free expression," said Zuckerberg after scrapping his notorious third-party fact-checking program, which was just awful. Of course, he did that in favor of a community notes approach to verifying information, modeled after, of course, Elon Musk's X. But Zuckerberg's fresh perspective is a clear leap forward in the march against censorship. But as the experience of Abdo in Egypt warns, it isn't only social media companies who can pose a threat to our right to speech. As free as social media platforms ought to be, governments can nevertheless seize power to shut down speech that they don't like, whatever it may appear. Few are shocked to learn of unjust crackdowns against blasphemy in the Muslim world, in which, of course, this story of Abdo is based. But the problem of state censorship is thriving in the West too. Last week, it was reported that the British Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner is set to create a Council of Islamophobia. Yeah, Council on Islamophobia amidst turmoil on the streets of England, a move which could severely limit free speech and criticism of religious views. The announcement came days after a man was arrested in Manchester for burning a Quran and later publicly named by police, despite the risk of threats posed to his life. Recently, in another incident, a Bristol preacher was similarly arrested for daring to compare Islam and Christianity in public. And it was in an answer to a question. And in Wakefield, police reported a hate incident against a 14-year-old autistic boy who suffered who scuffed a Quran at school. Following death threats, the child was forced into hiding, but police refused to prosecute his tormentors for fear of escalating the situation, as they said. Instead, a white British mother donned a hijab and begged for forgiveness at the local mosque. Granted, most leaders in the West do not voice support for outright blasphemy laws of the kind that we see across the Middle East and North Africa. But many instead welcome these under mechanic initiatives via more cleverly disguised hate speech laws. I think what we're seeing here, and I could go on and on with example after example after example. In Mexico, a court convicted a politician and former presidential candidate of gender-based political violence, all because he spoke out on X about trans-identifying males taking spaces in Congress designated for females. As part of his punishment, he was made to attend a re-education course and forced to tweet an apology for his words every day, twice a day for 14 days. I mean, again, I could go on and on. Australia, I could give you numerous examples of where free speech is simply trying to be squashed. And you know, again, we will probably do something in the near future again on the importance of free speech, because I really believe it is so important. It is one of our rights that we have been granted by God and upheld by the Constitution and the Bill of Rights to have, and it's that important because it's the linchpin when it comes to a lot of our other rights. If our right to free speech goes away, a lot of our other rights are squashed as well. So anyway, I would love to hear your thoughts on it. You can do that, of course, in the comment section on the YouTube. You can do it at our website, uncommonsensepodcast.com. And thank you for listening. This podcast is a production of Morganite Communications.